Welcome to Raidercast, exploring Tomb Raider's myths, monsters and mysteries. Today, once again, we'll be flying in the face of anyone who's ever told you that video games will rot your brain and are not educational, by taking a look at the science behind some of Lara's more space-centric adventures. Much like the premise of Shadow of the Tomb Raider, December 14th, 2020 sees a total solar eclipse visible from parts of South America. But that isn't the only time Lara has dealt with non-terrestrial events in the games and films. So, to tell us more about Tomb Raider's cosmic conundrums, solar science and meteoric mysteries, please welcome the gaming astroholic and astrophysicist, Dr. Alfredo Carpineti. Welcome to Raidercast, Dr. Carpineti.
Hello, long-time listener, first-time caller. If any of you don't know me, I'm Chris's husband.
Woo! It's not nepotism.
Absolutely not nepotism.
No, I had this planned for a very long time.
It's just lucky to have me here. And because he's not going to be able to edit this part out, I'm also much better than him at pretty much all of the new Tomb Raider games. And that's how I got into Tomb Raider. That's how my Tomb Raider journey started.
I was going to ask you to tell us about your Tomb Raider journey, but I can't believe you weaved that into the...
They have to know the truth.
You say that, but I mean, see, what you're referring to is Shantytown, isn't it?
What happened in Shantytown? First of all, my Tomb Raider journey started much earlier. I was aware of Lara Croft and Tomb Raider from the very beginning. I had friends that played Tomb Raider, but I didn't have a PS1, so I never played it. And when I started in Chris, I think it was just at the time that the reboot had come out. And he was like, oh, play this game. So I started playing the game while I was visiting him in Wales. And I was playing Reboot, and we got to the part of Shantytown. Chris loved to do it in a very sneaky and very not getting caught kind of way.
Yeah, bow and arrow from a distance.
I tried that twice and I lost patience. So I decided to do it in a better way. I took my shotgun and I just run through Shantytown shooting any enemy in the face. Got so many headshots and managed to go through that level very quickly. At which point, Chris told me, that's not how you play it.
I maintain that's not how you play it. You're supposed to suffer. You're supposed to do it the slow way. You're supposed to get frustrated. You're supposed to do it 1,000,001 times, sneaky.
I would argue that classic Lara would have solved this like I did.
Oh, turning that one on me.
Absolutely. Anyway, that's pretty much...
Moving on.
That's pretty much my Tomb Raider journey, and everything else, and I know a lot about Tomb Raider, is thanks to you and listening.
Didn't really have a choice.
Yes, that is Stockholm Syndrome. That is pretty much everything that I know. And I played all of the new games. I know a few things about the olds. And
I think we also played the co-op Temple of Osiris together.
Yes, we did. And obviously watched the movies. And I'm very excited to talk about some of the astronomy and space-related themes in Tomb Raiders. Because some of them obviously are fantasy and not exactly happening like that. But at the same time, some quite accurate. So we can explore that.
That's really cool. So for a bit more context, Alfredo, if you don't mind introducing yourself a little bit more and telling people why I've chosen you for this particular episode.
Okay, I guess it's not because I'm your husband. I think you're asking for my scientific credential.
Yes.
I have a PhD in astrophysics, and none of the things that we're actually going to discuss is my specific area of expertise. My area of expertise is galactic then
We're talking much more small
Yeah.
scale, I suppose, in this.
yeah, we're talking solar system, we're talking the Earth-Moon system, and we're talking about meteors and asteroids.
Ooh. So, I would like to start by delving a bit into Shadow of the Tomb Raider. At the beginning of the game, Lara Croft, a little bit selfish, a little bit preoccupied, steals an ancient dagger and sets in motion a Maya apocalypse, or a series of unfortunate events, shall we say. At around the same time, we have this eclipse that is going to be visible from South America, around the Amazon, Peru area. Now, towards the end of the game, spoilers for anyone who hasn't played it, but it's been out for a while now, get on it, and this eclipse happens, and you have this terrific final boss fight, huge eclipse in the sky. Now, this eclipse lasts the duration of the fight, which I would guess, on average, is probably about 5 minutes or so.
Yeah.
Probably a lot faster for some people who do it like speed runs, but potentially much longer. Please tell us a little bit about eclipses, because in my mind, 6 minutes is way too long for an eclipse. Like, for the sun to remain completely hidden, that seems like a very long time. Is there a lot of sort of fantasy interpretation going on here? What do you think?
So, I would say that the least believable thing in Shadow is not actually the eclipse and its length. It's more about that Lara is responsible for everything that happens. So I would believe it more in the fact that this cataclysm are predicted by the prophecy, and there is fate and destiny. I don't know, maybe it's the being brought up Catholic, but it's more believable that the tsunami, the eclipse were predicted to happen than she's causing it by removing the dagger.
Yeah.
But apart from that little consideration, everything about the eclipse is quite scientific. The reason why I make that point is because I think there was a comment about how the removal of the dagger starts the chain of the events that culminates in the eclipse. So it makes it feel that in a way she's causing the eclipse. But we actually know that, eclipses, we can predict them way in the future, mostly because we've been predicting them and studying them for thousands of years. So, what is an eclipse? In this case, in the case of the game, and in the case of the December 14, 2020 eclipse, is an eclipse of the sun. So the moon, the Earth and the sun are aligned in a way that the moon is blocking the light from the sun. They are in what is called syzygy, which is a great Scrabble word, and it means...
Triple score.
Yeah, and if you do it, I think it's 24 points, which is amazing. But it means that 3 celestial bodies are in a straight line.
Interesting.
Eclipses are, on one hand, are a lot more common than people think. On the other hand, are a lot less common than they could be. They happen almost every 6 months. There is a solar eclipse. Yes.
Wow.
And it's just because of the alignment between the Earth, the Sun, and the Moon. So the orbital plane of the Moon is about 5 degrees incline compared to the orbital plane of the Earth. It takes a few rotations of...
For it to get into line.
Yeah.
I see. Okay.
And the alignment that happens every 6 months or so can be partial, can be total, can be hybrid, and can be annular, in which you have the ring of fire.
Okay.
And it really depends on the complexity of the lunar orbit around the Earth. This means that there are a lot of solar eclipses, but at the same time, a lot of them, they are just partial, a lot of them are just crossing the ocean, and so the big events that we think total solar eclipse over a lot of populated areas, it's quite rare. We've been quite fortunate because in 2017 we flew to the US to see the Great American Eclipse,
It was a great American eclipse.
And it was incredible. It was absolutely stunning. One of the most spectacular things I've ever seen.
We nearly didn't.
We nearly didn't.
We only saw about 30 seconds of it before it clouded over. But,
and that was where we were. I think it was a minute 12 seconds, if I remember correct. And the maximum during that eclipse was about a minute 50.
For the total?
For the total, so the length of totality.
Yeah.
But actually, you can have longer eclipses. I think the next longest is going to be in 2026, but the longest possible is 7 minutes 31.
Oh, so there is an absolute finite limit.
Yeah, and again, it depends on the apparent speed of the moon, the apparent speed of the sun, their position, and where the shadow appears on Earth.
Might that be... Because I think in Tomb Raider, the event happens and it's visible from Peru, and Peru is very close to the equator. Is that relevant? Like, could they get away with saying this one in the game lasted so long because it was near the equator?
They certainly get away to say something like that. Actually, the eclipse that I was referring to is in 2027, August 2nd, 2027, and it will be visible from the Atlantic to the Indian Ocean, and the maximum duration of totality will be observed in Egypt, roughly 60 kilometers southeast of Luxor.
Whoa.
And will last 6 minutes and 22 seconds.
Within that distance, you could literally go and stand in the Temple of Luxor or at the Temple of Karnak and witness a total solar eclipse.
Yep.
On August 2nd, 2027.
We're doing it.
We are going there and doing
it. It depends about the size of the path of totality, but I think...
I would have thought a distance of 60 kilometers still wouldn't really affect that.
In Luxor, the max width of the band is going to be 258 kilometers. So, yes, we can be in the Temple of Karnak for over 6 minutes enjoying this eclipse.
We're going to merge those Tomb Raider games together.
Fantastic.
For the people in South America, December 14th this year, how long will totality last?
It will be quite good. It's going to be visible in the afternoon of December 14th, and it will last 2 minutes 10 seconds, which is quite good.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Wow. So I'd like to finish talking about eclipses by having a little bit of a delve into the past. What did people used to think eclipses were? Do you know much about ancient things like omens? Were they of good things, of bad things? What did eclipses signify?
There have been a lot of myths and legend associated with eclipses throughout world cultures, but I think I find more fascinating that for a very long time humanity has known what eclipses are. For as much as there've been like connection with demons, superstition, dragons, etc., a lot of our understanding of astronomy is thanks of accurate calculation that humans 3, 4, 5,000 years ago were doing by measuring eclipses. The ancient Greeks were able to understand the complex motion of the moon thanks to the knowledge of the eclipses. It's not what we interpret as modern astronomy. There is a lot of astrology, there are a lot of superstition, but that data is crucial to our current understanding.
On the shoulders of giants.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. So moving on to the next part of the episode, I want to talk a little bit about the very, very first Tomb Raider film starring Angelina Jolie, because we're going to be going a little bit further away from the sun, out into our solar system. In the film, Lara Croft discovers a ticking clock, and this clock began ticking because of a planetary alignment. Now this is to do with the Illuminati, and there's an entire plot that also revolves around something else a little bit spacey, but we'll get to that a little bit later.
Also, there's naked Daniel Craig in the movie.
There is naked Daniel Craig in the movie. On the subject of celestial bodies.
Hey. Yeah.
she looks through a telescope and she sees all of the planets aligned in the sky. Can that happen?
Well, yes and no. Planets can sort of align, but not in the way that is described.
Not in a very straight line if you're looking.
No, I'm afraid
that
not.
Couldn't, no.
It could never happen. So,
Oh.
let's start with the first issue with that idea. Yes, the planets are more or less on the same plane, so they're orbiting more or less on the same plane in the solar system, which is more or less around the equator of the sun, but not exactly it. So
they're going to be on different levels.
Yes.
So they couldn't be in a straight line because of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
What happens is that it's possible for the planets to be mostly in the same region of the sky. So we've seen earlier this year that I think Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn and Venus were all in the western sky.
That's amazing. I was literally about to ask, like, what are the maximum number you could actually see in the sky at once?
Well,
so that's at
with
least
telescope, I think it's possible to see them in the same area of the sky about once every few thousand years.
Wow.
But
so that's
again,
really cool.
Yeah, but as a cosmic MacGuffin to make something happen, it's completely unimportant. Simply because when it comes to gravity, distance and size that matter. If you need to be twice as far, or if you are twice as far, you need to be 4 times as massive to have the same influence. So the planets, even though Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus and Neptune are very massive, they're so far away that their gravitational influence on our planet is negligible.
It's a clock.
I found it last night. It was ticking.
Must be one of them ticking clocks, eh?
So they wouldn't be able to cause any effect on Earth
No, this
or
is
on objects on Earth.
no, but this is why it feels.
I mean, it's sci-fi, isn't it?
Yeah, but this is why shadow feels a lot more realistic. That is the effect of the moon and the sun.
Ironically grounded.
Ironically grounded.
It's the first stage of the alignment of all 9 planets, culminating in a full solar eclipse. It only happens once every 5,000 years.
So, despite that, is something that we really enjoy, planetary alignment, because we like things that are neat and tidy. And another thing that's happening this December is a famous planetary alignment, which is the Great Conjunction.
Ooh, what's that?
It's when Saturn and Jupiter, they will be so close in the sky that they will appear as a single object. And it's going to happen on the 21st of December, 2020. And if you have a chance to go out, go and look at it.
It's a Yule star.
It's a Yule star. And I'm really hoping that we get good weather so I can see it.
I'd love to see that. That's amazing. So December 2020, pretty fantastic for astronomy.
Yes, if you are somewhere in South America with good weather.
Yeah, I suppose so. Now, as you were talking about, people like to see these things because of like symmetry and things looking pretty and assigning meaning to them. Again, diving into the past of these things, do you know of any sort of myths or anything to do with alignments and what they used to think they were, or were they even known about? Because so long ago, people didn't realize that they were planets. They just assumed they were stars.
The planets have been known for a long time. They didn't recognize them as object like Earth, although it's complex as an idea, because there's definitely been school of thought for many thousands of years, again across the world, that consider Earth and the Sun and the system as something that would be common across the universe. But I think till the advent of the telescope, it was not clear what these other worlds were. But they knew that the planets were not stars. The word itself, planets, comes from the Greek for wanderer, because they moved in the sky in a peculiar fashion that didn't match the stars, which were in a way fixed on a celestial sphere.
So I think in terms of myths and legends, this would probably tie very heavily into ancient Egyptian astrology and study of the stars in that sense, and assigning meaning to things, like where these wanderers in the sky are and what that could mean for the people on Earth, I suppose.
Absolutely. Astrology for such a long time was data science. They were cataloging so much information about the stars because they believed that by understanding the position of these planets with the position of the zodiac constellation, they would be able to understand some secret about the universe.
Magical thinking again.
Magical thinking, but it's also, they were aware that there was so much information there. To be honest, what they didn't have was thousands of years of information before them that could show them a different approach. But at the same time, there were a lot of thinkers. And again, we often just consider Western philosophy, but there were a lot of thinkers all across the world understanding that these objects were not portents of doom. They were just other objects in the natural world.
So it's not always doom and gloom.
It is not always doom and gloom, but for many, many centuries, and until astronomy got properly separated from astrology, and even there, it's probably just over the last 300 years, the position, etc., could be spelled doom or fortune, but the planet themselves and the stars were not the indication of the fault was never in our stars.
Yeah.
It was simply, it was the occasion, the call for the interpretation.
That's pretty awesome. And I am going to swiftly head over back around the sun to talk about meteors and meteorites. Because this is something that has featured quite a bit throughout the series, in the games and the films. In Tomb Raider 3, the game starts with a meteor heading towards Earth. It smashes down into a dense rainforest jungle, creates a massive explosion, and then the game skips forwards to present day, which was 1998, which it said was Antarctica. And people arrived there and they carved idols out of this meteorite. Then, thanks to the crew of Charles Darwin's ship, they got spread around the world. That's basically the premise of that game. It's quite a cool adventure-y setup. But first of all, are there any sort of well-known impact craters in Antarctica? And because I know there is a landmass under all that snow and ice in Antarctica, how long ago is it likely to have been like a rainforest or a jungle? Was that ever a thing?
So, lots of questions. First of all, Antarctica used to be a rainforest. Mostly it was a swampy, temperate rainforest, like the one that you might find in modern day New Zealand. Well, not super swampy, but definitely temperate rather than a tropical rainforest. About 90 million years ago, so at the time of the dinosaurs. I think probably the peak of T-Rex, if I remember correctly.
Cool, that's really good to know.
But Antarctica's been a frozen landmass for tens of millions of years.
So the area of Antarctica, is that known for meteorite impact craters?
Well, it's known for asteroid impacts, but also for meteorites. So it's just about the size.
Okay. Size queen.
Well, we know that there is a massive asteroid impact called the Ross craters that has the diameter of 550 kilometers.
Whoa!
That formed during the Oligocene, which is the epoch going from 33.9 to 23 million years ago. There are two other large craters, one that might have formed over 500 million years ago, but is very uncertain, and one of unknown age. So, large impact craters have been possible. When it comes to asteroids and meteors in Antarctica, there are some uncertain craters that we cannot confirm that happened, but they could be significantly big and technically having happened in a recent epoch, which did not lead to an extinction event, like in the case of Chicxulub, which is the dinosaur-killing asteroid. What's exciting about meteors is that there is a lot of meteors being collected from Antarctica. And the reason why that happens is because it's very easy to spot.
Little black rock.
Yeah, a
in
black
all the
rock
snow.
in an environment that is just white.
Wow.
And it is not the only place. Like, for example, there are meteor hunters in the Australia outback that track fireballs and try to predict if they will leave behind a meteorite, because not all meteors turn into meteorites. You need to have quite something that is quite sizable to be able to survive the atmosphere.
Diving in quickly with a little question here, that's something I've wondered for a while. If you saw a meteor flying overhead and it crashed fairly close to where you live, like say half an hour away, and you drove out to see the crater, and you happened to be the first one there, and there was a tiny bit, or there was fragments of meteorite lying around, are you legally allowed to keep them if you find them?
I think so.
That's really cool.
I think so. I think it would be nice if you
donated some to
a museum.
Yeah.
But also, question for you: there's not going to be a big crater, but you find this rock. Are you going to grab it?
Not with my bare hands.
Why not?
Because I think it would be very, very, very cold.
Correct answer.
I know
well
it wasn't
done.
going to be very, very hot.
Yeah, it was a trick question.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's fascinating that most meteors, by the time they touch ground, are cold because they are at pretty much the very cold temperature of deep space, and as they burn through the atmosphere, the outer layers that are burning are just getting a sort of flash heated and destroyed.
Yeah.
And by the time that they are almost Earth, they are at terminal velocity, so they're going quite fast, but not incredibly fast, and they are just not going to warm up that much.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very cold.
So in a lot of the games, things are carved out of meteorite, and I think it's this sort of rock from the heavens, something celestial, something possibly even divine that's fell from the heavens. Now we can carve things out of it. In Tomb Raider 3, there are separate artifacts that are spread around the world, as I mentioned. In Shadow of the Tomb Raider, pretty sure the dagger and the box that the dagger goes into were carved out of meteorite. That's based on two things: a little snippet of information from the Art of Shadow of the Tomb Raider book, but also in the game itself, Lara reads an inscription which says something along the lines of the box and or the dagger were forged in heaven and came to earth. You see the symbolism there. But also, up close, the texture of the dagger and the texture of the box looks very much like meteorite. Also, heading back to the Tomb Raider 1 first film with Angelina Jolie, the Triangle of Light was carved from a meteorite that hit, again, I think it was actually in Antarctica, by a civilization who came to see this crater. They started to worship the rock and they forged an artifact out of it. So carved idols and artifacts from meteorite are very common within the Tomb Raider universe. Are they very common? Are there famous artifacts that we know of that are carved from meteorite?
Absolutely. Not only there are famous examples of artifacts made out of meteorites, they're also the oldest metal artifact known is from meteorite.
Oh, what is that?
Egyptian iron beads, and they've been made from hammered meteoritic iron, which is quite exciting, and they date to circa 3200 BC. This is quite interesting. There are a few more things connected to Egypt and meteors. Tutankhamun has a famous dagger.
This is exciting.
Yeah, made of metal from a meteor. And I find it even more fascinating. This impact in the desert produced some glass beads that have been carved into pendants and amulets.
Is that the yellow scarab?
Yeah,
in
the
one
yellow
of the
scarabs.
necklace?
And that is just sand that the heat of the impact turned into glass.
That is incredible.
And that is absolutely fascinating. I am certain that the use of meteoritic iron is probably been extremely common throughout every civilization that was doing metal work. Simply because meteors, iron nickel meteorites, were maybe not an abundant source of metals, but an easy one because they're already an alloy and they're very low on contamination. You don't have to mine it and extract it, you just find it somewhere.
So it's quite common to find then across the world.
I wouldn't say they're common to find because meteors, in a way, they're rare, but they are not uncommon things.
Okay, so I'm pretty glad they're not altogether common, because that makes me even happier with our choice of wedding rings being forged out of meteorite now as well.
Yeah, that was a good choice on our part.
Makes them a little bit more special.
Yes, but the fact that the oldest surviving metal object comes from iron from a meteor tells you that at least, and again, maybe it's because in the desert a nice big shiny rock is quite visible.
Yes.
That ancient Egyptians could see it as a nice, easy source of metal, that they didn't have to dig.
And no doubt it was of great spiritual importance to them as well. I think of any ancient culture would see it.
Well, depends if they've seen it coming down.
I suppose so, yeah, if they didn't know where it came from.
Yeah.
That's true.
But yeah, if they seen it come down as there is this piece of heavens come down and I can make a dagger out of it. Damn right I'm making a dagger out of it. Or a lovely necklace, like in the oldest example.
Wonderful, okay. This has been a fantastic episode. It's been very, very fun. And it has been worth the wait. This was one of the first episodes I planned back halfway through season 1. I thought, I need you on board to talk about space. There are so many space things in Tomb Raider, and I'm so glad it finally happened.
Well, I'm glad that for once our roles are reversed in terms of podcasting.
Ah, as in I'm the expert and you're not.
Well, I would also still consider that I'm the expert, but yes, I was referring to our other podcast.
Go check
plugging.
it out. Yeah, so it's shameless plug. It's still our podcast.
Yes.
So go check out our other podcast, the Astroholic Explains.
Exactly. It's the same dynamic. You ask questions and I answer.
Yeah.
But it was fun to have a different approach.
And I hope if any of the people who make the Tomb Raider games are listening, get putting more space things into the games in future so I can have you back on as a guest again.
Yeah, come on. There were a lot of things about aliens. Do aliens now.
Yeah, do aliens again.
You know what? This is the Indiana Jones paradox.
As in, you want it to be aliens but for them not to show it?
No, what is the fact that Indiana Jones was a lot more believable when it was weird religious stuff than when it was suddenly aliens.
I think it was always aliens.
And on that note...
And on that note... Hey, I get to say that. It's my podcast.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. And all you listeners, remember, a shotgun to the face is the way through Shantytown.
It's not. Goodbye.